Good evening. Welcome to the Pullman City Council meeting for this first day of September of 2020. And Dee, would you please take roll?
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor Johnson.
Present.
Councilmember Chapman.
Present.
Councilmember McCall.
Here.
Councilmember Parks.
Here.
Councilmember Records.
Here.
Councilmember Sorensen.
Here.
Councilmember Weller.
Present.
Councilmember Wright.
Here.
Thank you, Dee. Under announcements tonight, obviously Pullman has been in the news regarding the pandemic and the numbers around here. Gary Jenkins will be putting out a news release tomorrow morning, basically saying that the Pullman Police Department has issued 10 nuisance party infractions to party hosts over the last 5 days in response to the dramatic increase in COVID-19 cases in the Pullman community. This is one way that we can try and help stop the spread, especially when it goes to large parties. We also have in that news release that Pullman Mayor Glenn Johnson, the leadership of WSU, have expressed support for that enforcement. And in Gary's release, it talks about of the 10 nuisance party infractions, 9 of those violations occurred on College Hill, 1 occurred on Sunnyside Hill. Violations of the nuisance party ordinance is a civil infraction, and violators are subject to a minimum of $250 fine for a first offense and a minimum of $350 for a second and subsequent offense. Several of us were on the COVID-19 briefing this morning, and we have also been in contact. I've been in contact with the governor's staff this afternoon. We also heard that the governor's staff has been very supportive, the governor as well, and we'll have a group of 25 Army National Guardsmen in Pullman. They left Yakima. They've been over at Yakima helping with tests over there. They're going to work in our community as well. And according to the briefing that we got this morning, Pullman Regional Hospital has done over 1,000 tests. It's about 150 a day. They say it is tough to keep up, and that's another reason why WSU has asked for governor's help. And right, I think it's tomorrow, you'll have a bus in front of the president's mansion where they'll be doing tests there. Tests are taking up to about 72 hours right now, a little bit longer than expected. One time we were getting tests back in 24 to 36 hours. And that's another reason why Insight is now going to be at the Student Health. And that's one of the testing organizations, and they'll be doing tests there. And that's in connection with WSU's veterinary medicine program. And they also say that students can go through the telemed process and they can get their orders that way. Is Jen Hackman on the line here tonight? Because we also, I just keep getting a thing on my sign about the meeting, so I didn't quite see it, but we'll be putting out a release too, talking effective immediately. The city of Pullman will ease or lift certain regulations to allow businesses to expand to private parking lots and certain public right-of-ways, including sidewalks, without going through a public works process. Parking and public right-of-way requirements are being reduced, leasing fees removed so that businesses can move easily and use sidewalk and private parking areas just to try and help our local businesses keep going. And this is not to circumvent any kind of governor's order. This is basically to work within that governor's order so people can use the outside, can have social distancing. And of course, we are highly recommending masks at all times. And when you're eating, obviously you can take the mask off. But if we keep that 6-foot distancing, wash your hands, the same messages that we've been making quite frequently. Al, I think I saw a hand up there just a little bit.
Yeah, I just had a question in regards to the testing and WSU and things here. I've had a number of people talk to me about this, and I just got to bring it up since you put it in announcements. The lack of Washington State University's commitment to get into the testing program, in my opinion, and not getting things set up to where it's put an awful lot of pressure on our local hospital is extremely disappointing to me. I know that this morning in a meeting, Dr. Bonnie DeVries made a statement that the university has been really slow in getting their testing going. And I just I just have some comments to make about that. And the pressure put on our community with the students coming back to town is extremely concerning to me. That there wasn't more planning done in the process with the fall semester. Um, I think that they didn't know when they were going to have school or not have school, but they had projections of the number of students coming back to town, and they're really, in my opinion, unless there was nothing kind of set up to help with the testing or taking care of things, and I'm rather disappointed in that, and I don't know what the lack was or what the problem was, but I see that they're moving forward with trying to get some testing going. They've got some yurt type facilities set up at Student Health right now. And then with the mobile one coming in, that's going to help. But, they put our community at risk, in my opinion. And I do think that there's some answers that need to be put out to some questions as to why the lack of planning. And I just wanted to throw that out there. I know this is in announcements, Glenn. I apologize for that, but it was just good timing for it with what you were talking about. And I don't know if anybody else has anything to say about it, but I had to voice that. I've got professionals in the field talking about it, and local community people talking about it, and just wanted to throw that out there. Thank you.
Okay, Nathan, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Al, also for bringing that up. Yeah, I know I've been on the some of the COVID calls only for the last, I think, 3 weeks. But I will say that before the students came, there was a lot of discussion about we don't know how many students are coming back. I had asked and suggested, I think it was 2 weeks ago, that either Bonnie or someone in communications send an email out to all the students and ask how many of them are coming back or are in town, even if they're off campus, because that would give a good indication. I don't know if it's been done, but I would continue to urge WSU to take that step so that we have some numbers to go by. I will also say that I had heard several weeks ago about people concerned about the emergency, whether there was an emergency plan. And I'm really glad Mayor Johnson and Gary and Chief Heston, Chief Jenkins, sorry, Gary, Chief Jenkins, and WSU and the hospital, a lot of partners came together and gave an update on that. But people are still scared. There's still a lot of worries. And, from the COVID call this morning, it's expecting to go up because of additional testing. So that is something to keep in mind, that we will most likely see additional cases, but that's also because of additional testing. So it's important to try and keep people calm, especially in this time. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Took a little too long there.
It's all right. We were giving WSU estimates back in July that we were hearing from the different landlords in the community anywhere from 70 to 90% of the students coming back. And that number they had. I'm not putting any blame on it. They have been working in different ways. They got the School of Vet Med to get their Washington Animal Analytics Laboratory up working so they can do tests. I can remember making phone calls to Joe Schmick to make sure that was approved by the Department of Health, and it was. So they actually did a lot of planning. That was going back in June where they got that. So yes, we've been using Insight, and they also told us this morning that WSU has made arrangements for a private laboratory, Atlas, to come on board and I believe they'll be up and running next week. When I talked to Kirk Schultz this evening, they have already been doing some dry runs at Student Health on testing, and it will be ready to go to take some of the pressure off of Pullman Regional Hospital and Palouse Medical. They'll be able to do that on first of next week. So they've done some dry runs and things have gone well so far as these preliminary testing. So, yeah, Ann?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to clarify that the bulk of the students who have returned are living off campus. And therefore, WSU does not have any jurisdiction over their behavior. They're not coming onto campus because we have online learning. So initially, it didn't look like there was need for testing by WSU. Now we see that the behavior occurring off campus has threatened on-campus employees and staff, as well as our community. And that is why the testing is happening now, if that makes sense. Students came back because they couldn't break their leases and because they wanted to be here. And their families, in many cases, wanted them here. And so they came back to presumably study online, and then they were socializing as college students are wont to do. On campus, we have about 800 to 900 students on campus living in the residence halls. And, that is a different population that probably should be tested, and that's why that's happening now. But I just want to clarify, I've had a lot of people ask me, well, why isn't WSU doing things about off-campus behavior, about these students in fraternities and apartments? And well, they can't, and it's not really their jurisdiction. So, and my husband is in the provost office, so I'm getting this firsthand from the administration as well. So I'm glad that they're starting testing now. I think it's important, but I just want to clarify the responsibility of WSU from on campus to off campus can be a little bit, there's a difference there.
And WSU administration has been supportive, as I mentioned earlier, with Gary Jenkins and the police department in terms of enforcing these nuisance. And we're going to be discussing that again on the 15th of September, trying to clarify it. Laura McAloon's been working on some of those ordinances as well. There are other announcements other than COVID-19 coming up soon. The Celebrate Bicycle.
And we're not done talking about this yet.
Okay.
She's had her hand up the whole time, and then I have another statement.
I didn't see. Eileen. Okay, excuse me, Eileen. Go ahead.
I spoke with a practicing veterinarian who graduated several years ago, quite a few years ago, from WSU. She's a proud graduate of WSU. She has a great practice here in the community. And this veterinarian was outraged that the full resources of the wonderful veterinary teaching hospital we have here was not pressed into service for testing. This veterinarian knows what can be done and what can be done fairly readily. And this veterinarian was absolutely outraged that virtually nothing that we could see anyway, was done to use this incredible resource that we have here in Pullman, that testing could have been done.
Oh, Glenn, you're muted.
Excuse me. They are doing testing at the college vet medicine right now. Yes, it may have been a little bit late. Al, I'll go back to you.
A little bit.
And then we've got Pat. Okay. Al?
Oh, I thought Pat was going to go. I'm sorry.
I'll go to you and then we'll go to Pat.
Okay. So, Ann, I appreciate your comments there. Other than, universities across this United States are working with off-campus students. Okay. Just because they don't live in student housing doesn't mean that there's some responsibility of the university. Every single student that comes to this school that is in Pullman is paying a fee for student health. And those people need to be able to use student health instead of taxing our system in Pullman. They could have set this up. U of I is doing it. Most people at U of I live off campus. It's not about living on campus or not living on campus. What it has to do with is Washington State University students, and for them having a place to go with the university taking a little bit of responsibility. So I disagree with your statement about that and whether there's a legal thing they're responsible for or not, but there is an ethical responsibility of them being able to help us in the community.
Okay, Pat Wright.
Well, I certainly, wouldn't disagree with anything that anyone has said. And I guess I, like all of you, are disappointed in some of the actions that WSU failed to take, regardless of the fact that as long ago as in June, we were talking about plans for testing and the ability to test up to 4,000 students a day as they were coming back. That isn't going to solve our problem right now, obviously. Hindsight is always 2020. I guess I would like to know, for the sake of our community, how aggressive can we become in terms of forcing some different levels of compliance? I mean, last night, I think it was on the news, we got a carload of kids driving around with masks on, but they're just hooting and hollering. And essentially it's like, we don't care, we don't have to. And don't be a COVIDiot signs. But aside from that, we need to be really proactive, I think, in heading some of these community activities off. I know there's been some discussion about ticketing the party hosts. Are we going to start to ticket the party goers as well? Because ticketing the hosts are charging the kids that are coming in to party. So, I mean, there's just a lot of different dynamics going on that I think we just really need to get out in front of this going forward to whatever measure we can. Thank you.
Gary, you've had some conversations on the host and what that is entailed. I did speak to President Kirk Schultz about that today, and they have also made arrangements, WSU has made arrangements with local hotels to take care of any WSU student who may have been tested positive and the roommates don't want them at their apartment or whatever, that student can be housed at a hotel. And they're also working on the food preps and things like that for those students too. So that's also going underway. Gary, is there anything you want to add before we go to Brandon?
Well, it might be a good time for our city attorney to describe what she's working on. It relates to what Councilmember Wright mentioned about the party goers and some increased enforcement that we can do.
So right now, the city is citing hosts under the nuisance party ordinance. So the same ordinance that we cite hosts or property owners or landlords for parties at which there are repeat nuisance violations. Gary has issued a written determination that violation of the governor's and the public health officer orders constitute a public nuisance, and that's under the same definition of a public nuisance that we enforce litter and garbage and junk vehicles. And that's the strongest tool in the current code, is issuing tickets to the party hosts right now. And what happens is with that declaration that this is a nuisance party comes the ability for the police department to issue an order to disperse. And people who don't disperse from the party can then be charged for violating that order, which is a misdemeanor. So there are tools that can be used against party goers that are not leaving once the law enforcement has shown up and told them this is a nuisance party under the order and you need to disperse. So that we have those tools right now. We do have the ability right now to issue individual citations just for a nuisance violation. But our thought is that we can beef that up a bit. And so what we're working on are draft revisions to the nuisance code that we will bring to the council at the meeting on the 15th to strengthen those provisions and provide for more individual responsibility when it comes to violating both the governor's orders and public health official orders.
Okay, Brandon, you're next.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I appreciate Councilman Sorensen for bringing this up, and I understand Councilwoman Parks's position as well. This is, for me, this is an absolute perfect example of a town gown issue that we're dealing with that I think needs town gown participation in solving it. I do believe WSU plays a huge role in making sure that that we can figure out where these issues lie and put some resources to it. I don't want to focus too much on WSU though. It feels like whether they were late or not, they're starting to do some stuff, and I kind of want to look inward. What are we doing as a city? And so I appreciate, Laura, you're mentioning this, and I don't know if this means using the stick rather than the carrot, or moving to more enforcement rather than just educating and giving warnings. And in that regard, I agree with Councilwoman Wright. I think whatever we can do to strengthen that code and give us the ability to enforce, to make it stick in court, because money does talk. And unfortunately, I think short of some of that enforcement, I think these parties and other things that we're hearing about are gonna continue. And some of that, because it is off campus, that is our ability to enforce. WSU can't necessarily enforce all of those issues, outside that they might not know about and they might not be responding to, regardless of what ability they may have for expulsion and other things after the fact. But I do think we have a responsibility as a city to this town gown collaboration that we have, and recognize that we also do want students here. We want them to give us, to give business, and if we are expecting them to be here, or whether or not we expect them to be here, they're here. And if some of them, not all of them, but if some of them are acting irresponsibly, we need to not point the finger at WSU in that regard, and we need to go after that and make sure that we state very clearly and act very clearly on those expectations. And so, again, it's a town gown issue, and that means both the town and the gown have to play a part in that. And so, do I lay some blame with WSU? Yes, but can we do better? Probably. And so I appreciate, Laura, you mentioning that, and whatever we can give police to go and enforce. At this point, I would say let's do more enforcement and less education.
We have been doing, we've finished the education. We already tried that. That's why we're doing the enforcement. And that's why I mentioned that we've had 10 citations so far. Gary, just saw your hand.
Yes, Mayor. Well, you mentioned basically what I was going to say. I just want to make sure council was aware that we did have an education warning approach initially. As of last week, the direction to my staff was that when we went to any party that violated the nuisance party ordinance, including proclamation violations as far as distancing and mass and over 10 people, then we were going to issue an infraction right away. We're not going to require a warning before we issued those infractions. So that's what we're doing now. First time out to a party violation, we're going to issue an infraction.
So can I ask a clarifying question then on that? If we've already educated, when police go out to these parties, why would we need to wait until they disperse, or give them that option to disperse if that education's been given? I mean, wouldn't we have the ability at that point to issue a citation for that being a nuisance to all the party goers, or is that not capable?
That is what the chief is saying, that there are no more warnings. The declaration that it's a nuisance party and the citation to the host of the party, that's who you can cite under the nuisance ordinance, unless we cite the landlord or the property owner. That's happening immediately. Instantaneously with that comes the ability that if the party goers aren't dispersing, they also can then be cited for that failure to disperse.
Okay, Nathan, saw your hand. Nathan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I appreciate what Brandon is saying, what everybody else is saying, and I know we spent a lot of time on this already. I just want to say that I really appreciate what Gary has been doing. He acted in accordance when he saw that, you know, education was not doing the job, and pivoted, and now looking at the challenges. And I will say this, it's very, very difficult to nail down everybody at a party, especially when they disperse immediately. They run out of the door, they run out, you know. Chief Jenkins and his officers are not going to be chasing down college students in any way, shape, or form. So it's going to be difficult in that way. I've seen it in my own neighborhood. That being said, I think it's also important, and this is something the Whitman County Health Director, Troy, had mentioned, I believe it was last week, is that we are seeing an increase in students or that age group, but also we have seen a certain increase, not as much, in people who believe that the pandemic is a hoax and that it's politically motivated. And so it's very, very difficult, because those people that believe it's a hoax just will not wear masks, or most likely won't. Students at least may, even though it'll be a challenge at first. So I do want to mention that there are two major groups. It's not just the students. So anyways, that's enough for me.
Okay, and okay, we'll go to Dan Records.
I had a question for Laura. Does the governor's order itself not include a provision that it would constitute a misdemeanor for not wearing a mask in accordance with that order? Is that not its own kind of jurisdictional element that our police could enforce?
It depends on what lawyer you talk to. So the order itself doesn't have that it's a misdemeanor, but there is a provision in the emergency management statute that says that violation of a public health order is a misdemeanor. There is a split in the state amongst both municipal attorneys and law enforcement officers as to whether that's actually enforceable. And when you have that, you have an unwillingness on the part of the majority of law enforcement agencies to actually issue tickets when there's a dispute about whether it's enforceable. And frankly, when we started talking, when the chief and I started talking with other cities and other law enforcement agencies about actually even issuing tickets, we are the only jurisdiction in the state of Washington of which I am aware that is issuing tickets.
The reason why I bring that up is because the governor himself has made those public announcements that it would be a misdemeanor subject to fines.
Yes, and you would need the prosecutor to agree with that in order for charges to be prosecuted, and that isn't, I don't believe we would have that support locally.
Okay, thank you.
I believe that when he first ordered the mandatory mask order for Yakima County, when those numbers were going out of sight, they did mention at that time they could be cited for not having a mask on when they made that announcement. But again, there's dispute there as far as how.
Yes, and that there have been discussions with those are violations of state law. So that's not something that the city infractions are the ones that we determine whether they get issued, whether they get processed, and then they are then processed in district court. Other violations, what the prosecutor has asked the city to do is refer all charges, all recommendations for charges to the prosecuting attorney's office, and it's the prosecuting attorney's office decision as to whether or not to charge. And it's my understanding he will not recommend charges for any of those violations.
Any other questions before I move on to additional announcements? Okay. With that, okay, we'll just talk about Palouse Bike Week is coming up September 14th to the 19th. You can go to pullmanchamber.com, Bike Week, for more information. I keep mentioning the census because that's one of the things, the messages I sent back when we have Cougs conquer COVID. Also, we need to have Cougs conquer the census as well, because right now Whitman County is at about 61% of response. Pullman's only at 59.1%. And again, it only takes a couple of minutes. It's very important for the city, the county, the state to make sure your census is filled out. The Washington, Idaho Symphony is hosting the first ever virtual silent auction fundraiser. You can go to the Symphony's website at wa.idesymphony.org, and you can find out some more information on that. So those are the announcements tonight. The next item is item C on our agenda. It's the confirmation of appointment. I am recommending to the council that we appoint Kimberly Lackey to the Lawson Gardens Committee. She applied for the position. I had a chance to interview her and talk to her. She and her husband both got their PhDs here at WSU. They said when they were going to school, they went to Lawson Gardens a lot just to have peace and quiet and study. And she really enjoys the Lawson Gardens, and I highly recommend Kimberly Lackey to be confirmed tonight. So do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
moved and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? With that, thank you very much. We now move to the consent agenda. These items are considered routine in nature. Do I hear a motion to read by title only?
So moved.
Do I hear
Second.
it? Moved and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? With that, Laura McAloon, our city attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. Your consent agenda consists of a motion to dispense with the reading of the minutes of the regular meeting of August 18, 2020, and approve them as submitted. A motion to approve disbursements for accounts payable checks numbered 100730 through 100773, totaling $479,340.39. A motion to approve disbursements for accounts payable checks numbered 100841 through 100851, wires 633 and 636, payroll direct deposits 63377 through 63670, totaling $773,540.66. A motion to approve disbursements for accounts payable checks numbered 100774 through 100840, totaling $644,047.87. Resolution number R-59-20, a resolution setting September 15, 2020 as the date for a public hearing to consider adoption of a 6-year transportation improvement program for the city of Pullman for the years 2021 through 2026. And resolution number R-60-20, a resolution setting September 15, 2020 as the date for a public hearing to consider adoption of a 6-year capital improvement program for the city of Pullman for the years 2021 through 2026.
Is there any item the council would like out for discussion? Seeing none, the consent agenda consists of items 1 through, I have 6. Is that
It
correct?
is 6. That is
Okay.
correct.
Do I hear a motion to approve?
So move.
Okay, moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? With that, we go now to our regular agenda, item F. This is a discussion of the CARES Act funding recommendation. We go to our Director of Finance and Administration, Mike Urban.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Before you tonight for your discussion is my update on what has been going on with the CARES Act and some of my follow-up with the Commerce. And then I'm just interested in your discussion in any direction you wish to give me going forward for coming back on the 15th for a motion on the remainder of the spending. So just a quick update on I did include my original memo as well as the guidelines for the coronavirus relief. And just a couple updates that have happened. The first one that council should be aware of is we received an email yesterday. Governor Inslee made an announcement that they're going to release another $126,000 of federal dollars to indirect to local jurisdictions, counties, and smaller cities. The bigger cities, Spokane, Seattle, the bigger counties, King, Spokane, get direct funding on these dollars. The indirect comes through the feds into the Department of Commerce and back out to us. So that 126 that's going out to all the counties and cities, there isn't an allotment that has been designated yet. This is all, new breaking items. I can tell you this for sure that every city is going to get at least $30,000 this time. Last time it was $25,000. Every county is going to get $300,000 this time. So the minimums have risen, but the total that we received last time was 300,000. And when you're looking at 126, that's about 40% of the go around. So will we get another $1 million if it's based on population? Probably not, but there is some money coming to the city. We just need to figure out what the parameters are for spending that. So as soon as I know more, I'll certainly reach out to council and the mayor and keep you all posted. Going through some of the spending items that we have, I want to kind of touch on the table that I put out on what I expected for the, starting with the payroll. Originally, I had mentioned to council, I thought that would be 300,000. We've been receiving hour sheets back from our staff as to the time they've been putting in for COVID, and we're already over 350,000. And the June items are due to my office by Friday. A lot of staff has already submitted all the way through August, but there's a few of us that continue to roll in on a piece by piece basis. So I can actually see that number going up closer to 400,000, maybe even 450 as we go through October. The 25,000 for PPE and the FEMA part, it looks like we're going to be a little light on that. I'm still calculating. I do have the number for our 25% from Chief Lamoureux and the fire department. And that our portion is going to be 5,300 on that. So the rest of that all got paid by FEMA. So we're trying to maximize those grants as well. The supplies for equipment, the sterilizer and those items, plexiglass barriers, we're continuing to gather, but we're well over 25,000 towards that so far, and more keeps coming in and we're aggregating. The facilities, I'm going to circle back on the roof at the end of this quick discussion, but this is the item that just continues to develop, and I think I'll know more on this by this time next week as I work with the facilities department in Allen Davis. Technology, we're well over halfway there on some of the items that we're working on with the deployments and the tech to be able to do more remote work. And the enhancements to the public Wi-Fi system on the next item, and all those items were just south of 30,000 of the 38 already. So we're chugging along and making a real good dent in getting the city reimbursed on all of these things. The next item I want to talk on before I go back to the roof just really quick is the September, the second sterilizer unit. I talked to Chief Scharnhorst today, and he's been reaching out to his supply groups to make sure that we can get that item in a timely manner so we can qualify for the CARES reimbursement on it, because we do have to have it in, shipped and, in service by the 31st, and the invoice for that 31st of October. So he's been checking on that very carefully, and one of my recommendations at the end of this will be if he can get assurances that that's going to be able to happen, that's a good use for those CARES dollars as well as buying that second unit. So just coming back to the roof discussion that we had earlier, I went back to Commerce and really kind of hashed this out with my staff and their staff and talked about the different options. And the Commerce still has some concerns, and really what it boiled down to for them is just taking a basic repair to, we don't disagree that the roof leaked, and we don't disagree with that it needs to be a sterile environment, and we do need to protect our emergency shelter because we've committed so much to it, and we certainly need it to be available for us if it needs to be activated. But their big discussion was, you went all the way to full coating on the whole roof. What would have really, if these dollars wouldn't have been there, would you have gone with a lower price alternative? And that's when Kevin and I put our heads together and we went and found the original bid to just, fix what needs to be fixed so it quit leaking, and we deal with the rest. And then we rehashed the discussion and why we went the full way, because the full way to covering the whole roof was an $89,000 option just to fix what we needed to make it quit leaking and be safe, like on that basketball court, so people wouldn't slip and protect our investment was going to be 45,168. So we were already halfway there. So that's why we went to the higher amount. And when I brought that up to Commerce and we had that discussion, they said, well, that might be more of a toehold for you, where if you wanted to submit the lower amount saying this is what we would have done under the most dire of circumstances to continue the operations of that building, that might hold more weight than the full $89,000. So I wanted to relay that conversation to council. And so with that, I don't have a whole lot more news. I know I've gotten a lot of phone calls over the last 2 weeks from various individuals talking about some of the options on this. So I really wanted to answer questions and make myself available. So when I come back on the 15th with what council would like to do with the rest of these dollars, there's I feel like I have some guidance and consensus.
Okay, do I?
Yeah, Mike, I appreciate that.
So Brandon will recognize you right now, okay?
Yeah, thank you, Mike. I appreciate you bringing up the roof and where we stood on that. And I don't feel totally, off base for bringing it up a few weeks ago. And I appreciate you not letting that slide and instead coming and circling back and giving us some of the nuance to this and what they felt would qualify under CARES. So thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Any other comments? Eileen.
You're muted, Eileen.
I keep reaching for the wrong mouse. Mike, I was delighted to hear that we're getting some more funding. What do we know what the spending cutoff date is for the new funding? Is it, I mean, we're looking at October 31st here on this segment of it, but do we have any notion about where the next batch of money comes in and what our funding deadline is for that, or our spending funding deadline is for that, something like that?
Now, I was hoping that I would have some more information, and while we were all getting logged in and prepared for this, I did some more, internet detective work to see what I could come up with, and I reread the original press release because there was some concerns that there was a sentence at the top that said local governments that did not receive direct distribution. So that's why I really wanted to qualify the word indirect. So it's not like we're going to get passed over this time under the normal circumstances. I am most concerned with number one, what is the funding cutoff date to spend? Number two, what is the funding cutoff date to start? Because right now we can go all the way back to March 27th. And so I'm a little worried that if the new one starts October 31st, that might be an issue. But the fact that some other of the direct jurisdictions, like Spokane City Council voted this morning to spend some of their second round dollars because they got the direct dollars earlier than we will get the indirect. And I think it's for new items. So I need to know more. And I'm going to just plan on November 1st being the start date that we can incur costs on this. And I don't know how long we're going to have to do this, because the other item that keeps coming up in this is it can't be anything that's budgeted for. And if we can spend into 2021, that creates an interesting dynamic because we haven't passed a 2021 budget. So we may have some opportunities to look at our budget and say, well, this isn't budgeted for, so it's certainly available for CARES dollars.
And that brings me to one of my favorite topics. Is the new city hall the only designated shelter in this community? Is the only thing that's technically a shelter in this community? Because I thought the fire stations would fall under that.
I'm going to defer to the emergency manager because my familiarity with that document is not up to where it should be. Gary, do you have a thought on that? I can reach it. It's right over here next to me. I can thumb through it really quick.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Are our fire stations considered, or any other facilities in our community, as designated as shelters? and could possibly be eligible for funding through this?
Fire stations are not designated as shelters, no.
Okay.
Did we not on our comprehensive emergency plan also had Gladys Gym at one time as a possible shelter? I'm not 100% certain, but it seems to be in the back of my mind in one of those meetings we had that.
Yeah, I think at the moment, the shelter that used to be at Pioneer, which is now at the new rec center at the new City Hall building, is the only specifically designated shelter in a city facility.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Oh, Al.
Hey, Mike, can you answer for me with the CARES dollars? Is there anything that we could do in regards to marketing Pullman with the COVID-19 and trying to emphasize in regards to our things that are happening in Pullman, what we can do for you, and try to get people to come back here? I know that there was a local group of businesses in downtown Pullman that went around and did a little bit of work on this kind of thing. And, it only makes sense to me that we really, really, really need to emphasize, Pullman and what we've got to offer in Pullman and that type of thing. Is there any money we could use from the CARES Act, this additional that could go towards that?
There's 2 points I'm going to make on that to kind of help give you some more light on this. Before I do though, I want to be cautious that if we're looking at CARES dollars that we might be getting in the near future and going out and spending, we don't know what the deadlines are, but the deadline on this is we do have to have this active and spent by October 31st. So we're 8 weeks away. But to answer your question specifically, there's 2 things in the frequently asked questions, and I did reach out to Commerce on this and get some additional feedback. There is a provision in there for economic recovery planning, so that would certainly qualify under that. There's another one in here that's very, very direct, and that has to do with remarketing the recipients' convention facilities and tourism industry. We can certainly go out according to this and market, the tourism and bringing people to town, but they do caution very specifically that expenses relating to developing a long-term plan to reposition the recipient's convention or tourism industry and infrastructure would not qualify. So continue on a short term, hey, come to Pullman, come back to Pullman, find your way home and doing some economic recovery marketing, absolutely. But if it's a shift, then they're going to look at that very carefully and probably ask for that money back.
Okay, so this is something that we could use if we can get it in the system by the 31st of October. And I don't know if the rest of the council was able to look at the presentations that were put out and sent by Adam to everyone, just in regards to emphasizing Pullman, which we had a conversation about a few years ago about emphasizing Pullman. I think we need to refocus again and focus on Pullman. As I sit and look at current tourism things and advertising things that are being out there, it's not really hitting on Pullman very much. Palouse Falls, Kamiak Butte, that's not Pullman. I think for us and our economy in this town, with no fall football games, nobody coming to town for that, we've got all kinds of businesses that are on the edge of not making it. And we've got a lot of things we could promote in this town. I think this would be a really, really good spot for us to be able to emphasize some marketing here. I don't know what everybody else's thoughts are on that, but I think we could use these dollars and really put something together. And I think, we hire somebody professional to do it. We've got to have someone that knows what they're doing and can professionally put out a product that will enhance people wanting to come to Pullman.
Go to Ann, then we'll go to Eileen.
Thank you, Mayor. Al, I appreciate your comments very much. And I do agree that, we want to focus our tourism activities on Pullman. As far as the CARES dollars that are coming in right now, though, I feel like maybe that doesn't need to be the top priority right now, because we just had a big discussion about how we are concerned about the virus spreading into our community. And I feel that people are going to be wary about traveling to any other communities. I mean, I was in Spokane today and it was enjoyable but nerve-wracking at the same time. And I think a lot of people are going to feel that way about just traveling outside their community. So I'm just not sure if the use of these CARES dollars is best put toward tourism and building our businesses, which I really do want to do that. But I would want to talk to Mike a little bit more about where maybe he sees the needs, maybe Jen Hackman, and get a feel for the folks that have been working with these dollars since February and March, and just make sure that we are appropriating them in the best place possible. And again, just because based on the discussion we just had about the spread in our community, I'm not sure how effective using those dollars for tourism at this time would be.
Eileen, you're next.
Yeah, I looked at those materials that Mr. Lincoln sent out, and I was fascinated by it. It harkened back to a lot of the stuff that I was exposed to at the National Main Street Conference that I went to 2-3 years ago in Seattle. We could put together a package, and we wouldn't have to pull the trigger on it right now. We could hire somebody to do a package for us, and then when the time is right, we pull the trigger on it. So those CARES dollars would be utilized, hire a professional, and other communities are going to be doing this. These CARES dollars for this promotion and recovery it's to me, I read all 45 points on this document, and it is sparkling clear that this is a legitimate use of these dollars, and we need to hire a professional firm and City of Pullman be the client. And we should have oversight on this. So we make sure they don't go wandering on down to Canyon Butte or wherever, that it stays right here in Pullman. And there's been a ton of effort put forward by the Downtown Pullman Association to gather all this together. And I feel like we're gonna, nobody wants this COVID thing to go on forever. But a lot of momentum has been lost, because of this, and that's nobody's fault. It just is. But we have an opportunity to use some of these CARES dollars, put out an RFP or whatever it is that whatever alphabet soup is, see if there are firms out there that want to build us a package that we can pull the trigger on when we feel the time's right. And that's us as a city to make those choices. And we're not looking at using CARES dollars for a long-term package or approach, but for right now, we can use those dollars. We can shave a little money out of some places on Mike's document here, or we can cross our fingers and hope that the next batch of money that comes through, use it for that. But I really feel strongly that we need this to support Pullman, because every other community, you better believe that is going to be doing this, and the best professionals are going to get snapped up right away, because these dollars are available to hire those people.
Dan, your turn.
All right, thanks. My question on this would be really, I think this is something we definitely need to look at, long term as well. There's a lot of good materials that were included in that package that was sent out, and there's definitely room for improvement in a lot of the promotional advertising that we have currently. But what my question would be is this something that we could reasonably get an RFP out there and actually get somebody on board and actually be able to implement this in an 8-week period? Is that too short of a timeline to get something like that done? And if it is this something we want to look at doing regardless of whether or not it's CARES Act or not? Because that's a reimbursement. If we don't make it in the deadline, we're still on the hook for it. But is that something, that I think that's the question of how much commitment would we want to put towards that in kind of, is this something that even if we don't get reimbursed for it, is that something we want to do? Or is that kind of concern over our budget currently and how tight we are on things? Is that something we want to risk not being able to get reimbursed for that if we don't implement it fast enough?
Mike, any reaction to that?
Yeah, I've been I've been batting that around exactly too, is the timeline and getting a professional on board and what that would look like. And then all of a sudden yesterday at 3:30, we got the email that there's gonna be at least $30,000 more dollars coming our way, probably more. And does that make a lot more sense where we can string it out, but not knowing exactly, what the playing field is and everything. And the only thing I can go off of is the fact that Spokane, as one of the direct recipients, was able to make some moves today by their city council, and there's no other new rules that are discernible other than the fact that if there aren't any more rules, they still have till the end of the year to spend because they're a direct recipient. Since we're indirect, we only have till October 31st. So are we going to get extra dollars that I'm going to be coming back to you on the 15th going, okay, we got to spend this really fast. Regarding should we do this further and what happens if we aren't reimbursed? If it's tourism related, there is still money in the Civic Improvement Fund, and it's got a very healthy reserve. So if it's tourism related, you can certainly look at spending down some of the dollars in that as part of the budget process going forward, or even if you want to make an expenditure and let the LTAC committee know, as Laura McAloon explained before, what the options are for doing those types of requests a couple weeks ago. So there's another pot of money available for that as well.
Brandon, I saw your hand.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I think I spoke to some Emeritus Society folks today, and my sense in talking to a lot of them is they're very aware of the spike in COVID cases, and I think back to Councilman Records' survey that he did, and people's hesitation, right? And I would imagine that's grown quite a bit, but that's a huge reason why. If downtown, if we're looking at potential changes to spread things out, to have outdoor seating, I really feel like the field is wide in this one, ready to have additional business safely downtown. I think we'd be foolish to at least not try to see if we can get some money to make a plan to try to bring people in. And this doesn't mean that we're going to try to bring people in to have big social gatherings and party, but it is to try to keep some of these businesses afloat that are just barely hanging on. And combined with potential changes downtown that we're working on, I think this would be a good thing. And if we can't get some CARES money for this, then we would have to look at our options again. But if it's there, I think we shouldn't walk away from it.
Nathan, I see your hand.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I think what Al brings up and Eileen and Brandon, yeah, these are all good points. And I think Al can speak a little bit more towards this. I know for businesses, there's $10,000 per business that they can put for reimbursable funds. But Al, being on the SWITA board, I think you can speak a little bit more towards that than myself. The grant, could you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, there is currently some additional grant dollars that SWITA has put out. I know that Jennifer Hackman has put out an email here and there about it, and that SWITA is currently and actively looking for people to apply for it. You have to have your application in by the 11th of September, I think was the deadline. And it appears that there's quite a few dollars there for people to apply for. It's grant money. It can't be used for anything that you already have gotten grant money for. And there are certain restrictions on it in regards to how it can be used, but there's definitely some SWITA money out there. Now, there's also some other grant money that just became available. There's a $2,500 grant, and I can't remember the organization that's got that going, but there's all kinds of money out there for a lot of these businesses. So that's what I know about that. I know that Dawn, and she's hired a new person from SWITA, are going to be in town actually tomorrow, working, going around and talking to folks. So it's about getting the word out to them and getting them to apply for the thing, for those grants, Nathan. Let me just go back real quick to, the marketing of Pullman. And I feel strongly about this, whether or not we want a lot of people coming to town right at the moment, we still need people to know that we are here, okay, and that we are open for business. And we need them to know that Pullman is Pullman. And I'll just be honest with you, if you look at the marketing material that was sent to you, and the way that things are being put out there and continue to be put out there, it's just it's disheartening to see that we're advertising every place but Pullman. So no matter what we do today or any time in the near future, the focus needs to be brought back in on the city of Pullman. And I think this is a perfect opportunity to use some of these one-time care dollars. I don't see any reason, to be honest with you, that in the next 2 months we couldn't get something together so that we could get some money spent on this, because I think Mike's looking for a way to spend some of this money. If we don't spend it, we don't get it. Okay. And then there's also some money coming in after. We don't know that it's going to be more than 30,000 or not. We don't even know exactly what it's going to be. But I'm going to tell you right now that we need to, as a community, represent our people in this town and our businesses, and try to do everything we can to promote Pullman.
I serve on the Washington Economic Recovery Coalition, and one of the things I'm hearing from the Seattle side, there's only a few of us on the east side, they have done their studies, and they say basically because of COVID, we're only going to have largely in-state traveling. And the idea is to basically, from Seattle side, advertise the east side, and from the east side, advertise the Seattle side, to get people going back and forth and basically getting to our communities and spending money in these communities. And so by doing this Pullman marketing over on the west side to get people to travel over here, and it will be safe. And I think Eileen made a really good point that you can get this out for bid. You can get some things put together. And if you're not going to run it next week or the week after, or when you're going to run it in October, at least you have it ready to go. So I have another question, Mike, on the PPEs. Yes, we get FEMA reimbursement, but from Gary and Mike, and especially with the uptick that we've had, we need PPE for our own city staff, not only just fire and police, but for M&O and for parks and for our city staff and things like that. Is that an adequate number, 25,000?
I'll start, and I'll certainly ask both of the chiefs to jump in after me. As far as the CARES part of it goes, I'll comment on that. The dollars that we were originally putting in, once we did the 75%, because we were pushing as much of that PPE on the FEMA grant as we could. So our local match essentially is only 25%, and that's what we're moving on to this. So we've spent a lot more than that. And to the point, there's a very specific sentence in here about stockpiling. So I think I need a little more clarification on that, but I certainly think under the conditions, we can ramp up some ordering and do some more of that. But if that's really a true concern too, and we're worried about the everything ramping up a little bit, I think that makes a stronger case for my recommendation to get that second sterilizer, as long as it can show up on time and get covered under these cares, because it's about $15,000 plus we're probably going to need a supply of more liquid for the sterilization part of that. But if we want to start looking at ramping up our PPE, I want to reread a few things in here and reach back out of there. But I don't think we can get a warehouse and buy, $300,000 worth of PPE and store it for an inevitability. I think we need to be responding to what we can reasonably assure at this point in the day. And with that, I'll defer to the chiefs as to what their stockpiles look like and what they think their needs will be.
We'll go to Gary and then we'll go to Mike.
Well, I would say from the stream of supplies that we're getting through from the state through Whitman County Emergency Management and from County Department of Health, we haven't had any issues with PPE for at least our staff. So it seems like we're being kept in very good supply.
Mike?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I would say the same thing. We're just been stocking up, and between that and plus we're on a priority list from our retailers as well that we can get stuff if needed as well. So we're stocked up into the future, and if we see some kind of run going on, then we'll kind of stock up a little bit more. But like what Mike Urban said about getting a unit would be awesome, and then stocking up on the chemicals they use for that. So between those things, County Health, I think we're in pretty good shape.
And Mike, you were with Art Garrow today. I'm concerned about maintenance and operation. Some of the work that they're doing the video work in the sewers and things of that nature, and we want to make sure they have all the PPE they need. Were you hearing anything from them that they need? What's their supply like?
I know that through our normal process under the COVID purchasing that they had a very large order not too long ago. But I can certainly reach out to them and see what their needs are. I can tell you for sure that Kevin Gardis and Art Garrow are not bashful about letting us know what their PPE needs are if they're getting a little low. So I don't want to put words in their mouth, but I think that's something very easy to follow up on. I think I get the feeling anecdotally that they're in the same situation as the two chiefs just said, is that their access is there and they have some.
Okay. Eileen, I saw a hand up there earlier. Yeah, Eileen. And there you go.
Sorry, I keep muting myself. I'm going to kind of go for it here and ask for sort of a sense of the body and ask for some action on how we want to promote ourselves. If we're looking at this thing, kind of globally, people aren't really going to be traveling again, maybe until a year from now in spring. I mean, our beautiful canola blossoms are still going to be there. People from all over the world come to photograph those. People come from all over the world to ride their bikes over this beautiful country. Our beautiful country is still going to be here, and people will be making travel decisions now. People are searching travel websites. The traffic on travel websites is crazy. People got itchy feet. They want something to do. They want a place to go. They're going to be planning their trips now. We need this package put together by a marketing and promotion focus. We need to have oversight by city people in the city. Brandon has education and professional experience in this area. I have education and professional experience in this area. We have all the talent in the world. What we don't have is somebody that can put that package together for us using modern, I'm a little on the slow on the media side. I still do with a typewriter, but and put this thing together for us. Can I get a sense of the body this evening, or what the next step might be?
I agree with Councilman Sorensen. I agree with the approach to move forward. I don't want our message to be, we'll be waiting, for when you do decide, even if we know that they may be waiting to come here. I want to put the message out there that we don't expect you to just be in the queue, right? If you do want to come to Pullman, we're gonna do our level best to help you do this safely, and we are open for business.
Hey, Al, I saw your hand.
Yeah, I completely agree, Eileen and Brandon there. I think we need to get something going now. We need it to be professionally done. It needs to be run by the city. and not one of our contracted groups that we have out there. And I think we need to have control of it. I'm more than happy to work on it. I think Eileen would work on it. I think Brandon would work on it. We get someone hired professionally who can promote the city of Pullman. Okay. And you know what? If people aren't going to come in the next couple of months, so be it. But there's no reason that we can't make the promotion start and keep going.
Okay. Dan and Nathan, what are your comments? Go to Dan first.
I mean, I think we need to, I support moving forward with exploring kind of what professionals are out there that we could look at bringing in and taking a look at this.
Okay. Nathan, and then we'll go to Pat.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I agree. Having been on the council for, almost 13 years, along with Pat, and then serving on the Palouse Knowledge Corridor and so on and so forth, definitely, I think it's important to be able to focus on Pullman. And yeah, I appreciate Al and Eileen and Brandon, all of you for bringing it up. And yes.
Okay, Pat Wright.
Sorry, I didn't have my hand up, but I will say that I am sorry not to be more participatory here tonight. I had a minor surgical procedure today, and I'm not quite 100%. And so I wasn't totally prepared to discuss all of this tonight. And so I have to defer my opinion until we have more concrete information on what dollars are available and the time frame in which we need to use them.
So, Mike, you were going to come back on the 15th with, you sort of have a sense of the council tonight, at least of where they would like to go in this marketing. You can maybe allocate that as far as the cures, because you're coming back on the 15th with the proposal, because this is discussion tonight. So.
Thank you, Mayor. And after I address that, I do want to touch back on the PPE supply, because I found the section on it. So I just want to bring council up to date on that. As far as coming back on the 15th goes, that's absolutely I can. I guess I would want a sense from the council is how much should I parcel back of the unspent dollars to dedicate to this, provided that once we go out and do the exploratory and hire somebody, that they can get a plan put together and in place, and we can get invoiced by the end of October. Because if I come back on the 15th with still a rudimentary framework, now we're 6 weeks out and we still haven't done a request for proposals for a marketing firm. So I'm a little worried that we might leave some dollars on the table on the last minute holding back. So am I being asked to go out and find a marketing firm to give some proposals and bring that back and make sure that they can meet our timeline on the 15th? Is that the pleasure of the council?
Or at least at this stage, at least allocate some money for that, is what I'm, because it's going to be a while. If we have to go out to bid process and everything else, that's going to take a while. Al, I saw your hand up.
So Laura, do we have to put this out to bid?
It would depend on the size of the contract, but virtually all of our contracts do get under the city's procurement code do need to go out to bid.
Okay, what is the maximum amount that we would not have to go to bid?
I want to say 30,000. It might be 5,000, but let me look.
I had 30,000 in my mind, but I'm certainly deferring to you, Laura.
And as I recall, we still have the mayor's emergency declaration still.
That's true.
Good point.
Which normally takes the bid process.
So I'd make a suggestion that
It would be for an emergency procurement, Mayor. I
Okay.
don't know that this would fall under that.
Okay. Al, back to you.
I'd make a suggestion that, I mean, not knowing dollars, But knowing that we have what, 300,000 or something, Mike, that we have to get rid of or use, 10% of that doesn't seem overly out of line. Let's put $30,000 on it for right now. I doesn't seem like an unreasonable number to me. And if we come back on and find out that that's too much, we can always adjust. But I don't have a problem putting 30 grand on this thing. We get way more out of it than $30,000.
And for clarification, I think I understand completely where you're trying to go. If Laura confirms my thought here in a second, hopefully, the 30,000 and under the $30,000 falls under that. And really, we're using this dollars to just come up with a plan. We're not actually going out and buying the advertising yet.
Yeah.
There might be some additional dollars for that later. This is just for the work to say, here's what you should be doing, and here's some ideas for you, correct?
Well, I honestly think let's get it implemented. Why are we going to wait? So I think this includes finding the people, getting the stuff ready to go, and getting it moving.
Mayor, so I was going to say that what Mike was saying is if this is simply the personal services of a consultant, that does not require the competitive procurement. But if it does include goods with those personal services, so it sounds to me like that's what you're talking about, Councilmember Sorensen, is the actual materials, the advertising materials and products, that then does fall under the procurement code. And actually the micro purchase limit for products and services is $3,000. We had to update that number in 2017 as part of the federal procurement requirements for the city to receive federal funding.
Eileen, I saw a hand up. Eileen?
I think we were talking about a media package that is a plan that we can place on the shelf. We're talking about inconveniencing a bunch of electrons and making them march to our tune. We're not talking about buying T-shirts and swag, I don't think.
It's still
So
good.
is it still good?
It depends on what it is you want from this consultant. If you just want a plan, that's personal services, clearly personal services. If you want to hire an advertising agency to put together a print campaign for you, the materials they produce for that print campaign would be goods.
What Laura, what if it was not a product that was printed? What if it was online only, like social media advertising, things of that
I think
nature?
the product is then I've heard the lingo. I don't know the lingo, but so they produce images and designs and graphics that are then used for the online advertising. Those are products and goods that they provide. But putting together a marketing plan and advising you on how that would look would fall under the professional services or personal services exemption to the procurement code. So you could do the services part of it, but and you could do the services part of it while you go through a procurement process for something in addition to those services.
Thank you.
And then with the services, then there are also, you still have that $3,000 micro purchase provision, and then it goes up from there.
So Mike, Al, see your hand.
So let's do this. Let's find a way to do this instead of a way to find not to do it. Laura, we need your help here. I'm asking for your help right now to help us find a way that we can do this instead of us sitting here and saying we can't do it.
You can procure professional services without having to do a formal bid process. The dollar amount that you want to assign to actual products that produced by, say, an advertising agency is going to drive what you can do from there. So that's what I was talking about, the different procurement levels. So micro purchases less than or equal to $3,000 worth of materials, that's just determining that the purchase is fair and reasonable, and you're documenting that you've made calls to vendors to get quotes. If it's 3,000 to 100,000, you perform an independent cost estimate and you obtain price or rate quotes from a number of qualified services, and you do a cost or a price analysis. The actual formal bidding process, those are all part of your public procurement requirements. Formal bidding, which is probably what you're thinking of, is you publish a bid proposal and you wait and you have a formal bid opening. That's not triggered unless you want to spend more than $100,000.
Okay,
So it depends on how much.
So we can do 10 $2,900 procurements.
No, you cannot. You cannot artificially divide a procurement.
Each one's a
So-
separate contract. Okay, and I know we're joking around a little bit here, but here's the thing. Let's get it done.
Okay.
Let's make it happen.
So Mike's heard the direction tonight. We'll go back to you, Mike, and then we can
I
have
think
staff.
Pat has a question here.
Okay, Pat.
Okay, so since this is tourism related, marketing related, for the sake of argument, could we not be doing this under the auspices of tourism and eliminate, as it stands now with the contract that we have with the chamber, hear me out, to eliminate having to go through the bid process?
No.
Doesn't mean that the person who is the visitor director right now would be the person doing it, but that group work jointly with the city under the auspices of tourism to eliminate having to go through that step, only thinking in terms of the expediency of what we're talking about.
Okay, Dan?
Pat, are you talking about like going forward with working with a consultant, but then having the chamber kind of work with that consultant to implement the strategy that comes up with that plan?
If that's the format that we could use to get this done on a more timely basis. That's the only reason that I'm suggesting that, because that may give us a workaround the proposal aspect.
Okay, go to Ann and then we'll go to Al.
And thank you, Mayor. And I had that question too. And I know why this is being proposed. I do understand that. But we do pay money already to an entity to do this. So my question is, like Pat said, would it be more expeditious to work through that entity? And also, have we, not at a public meeting without any notice, but have we actually sat down and gone over the plan that we'd like to see for the money that we're already paying? I'm not advocating that we don't do other things, but it seems odd to me in these times that we would set aside that agreement with a contractor that we already have and say, let's go in a completely different direction. I understand the frustration behind it, I do. But in these times when we've heard complaints before from the council and the public about going to outside contractors and consultants, I just want to be prudent about the way we go about it. And as Pat said, and if we only have 6 weeks, would it be better to try to work through them? If not, I understand that. I just wanted to bring that up.
And just to let you know, I mean, we have a number of ad agencies and creative consultants here on the Palouse, and also in Pullman, and also in Spokane and elsewhere, that we certainly could call upon to see if they would make a proposal for us and to get us moving quicker. So that could move things along. And I think what I'm hearing, Mike, is that we need to allocate some money for this, along with whatever else we're doing. So, Al?
Yeah. let's just ask a couple quick questions. Laura, do we currently have a contract with the chamber?
Yes,
Yes, we do.
When does it expire?
it's up for renewal at the end of this year, right, Mike?
Yeah, I want to reread it. I think it is still current. There's some strange language in there that had to do with biennial budgets that we're doing now versus annual budgets. So that was part of the email that prompted my
Yeah, it is on our radar to review and update this final quarter of the year.
right.
Okay, so the other question I have is, do we have a tourism director at this time?
No,
No.
we have somebody as an interim because the tourism director turned in her resignation, found another job. They are now looking for somebody.
Okay, so here's my problem, and I'm just going to throw this out there. The advertising that we are getting from the tourism director position and the Chamber of Commerce is not where it needs to be. I have a hard time even thinking about having them be the ones that have anything to do with this. We need to hire a professional outside firm to take care of this. And I don't know how anyone could say we're doing a good job. And that is where I'm at. I am totally against putting this back under the chamber and putting it under the tourism director to take care of this situation at this time. This needs to be an independent thing, not under the chamber or tourism.
Well, I think that we've heard that we've got marketing, we've got creative consultants around the area. We can certainly work with that. And I'll see where Mike's at on that. And obviously the chamber's doing their thing right now too. Laura?
I've just taken a quick glance through it. I don't think that you could add this to that contract without a contract amendment. So I don't know that it would be any quicker. There's very specific dollar amounts in the contract for different media items. So targeted advertising, brochures, website and technology. At this point in the year, I'm assuming those have all been contracted for. They usually contract for those at the beginning of the year. But I would be doubtful that you could add this to that contract without both a contract amendment and a city budget amendment. Because it's all done through the budget.
Yeah, we're just talking about a marketing. It's not time to evaluate the chamber thing. And I think that's what I'm seeing from the council here tonight. So the staff can come back. And Mike, I saw your hand.
Yeah, I think I can put a bow on this, and I think I've maybe captured, and if I don't capture this properly, I do apologize. But based on the timeliness of getting this done and the fact that if we actually go to purchase hard goods or even the advertising electronically, we incur a different set of parameters than what it would take to just go out and ask somebody to put a plan together for us. And we can certainly dedicate dollars to that and move that along very timely. It's when we get into that last part, when they say, okay, how, as any good consultant would say, is how much do you have to spend on your marketing campaign? And that's kind of a nebulous number at today. $3,000 gets us past this, but what if you look at this and say this is great and we want to spend $100,000? Then that's really a huge step to take that probably won't happen in the next 8 weeks. But with the plan in place over the next 8 weeks, then we can discuss what type of deployment, newspapers or radio or direct mailing or however that is. So I kind of see this as two phases. If I'm catching the spirit of the council here, certainly trying to get as much done as we can on the CARES dollars, so we're using federal dollars, makes the most sense. But if it makes enough sense that we can pair off 10%, as Councilman Sorensen suggested, and spend $30,000 to come up with a marketing campaign, we can certainly move that piece along over the next several weeks.
You'll have a better idea with the money and where else we're at by when you're coming to the council the next meeting on the 15th.
So did I kind of hit that one fairly close? Am I in the ballpark with that thought, or is it no? We got to do the plan and we got to get the advertising done right away.
Well, you got to have a plan before you can do the advertising, and you got to find out what markets to hit and what stations of TV and social media and other platforms that are out there. So, and that's what a consultant, a creative consultant, can do. Okay. Al?
I want to end this here just a little bit from my conversation, saying, most communities have a strong social media presence out there. I mean, we showed some examples of that in the packet that was sent to everyone. If the chamber or tourism had the skills and the ability to create such a platform, it would already have been done. So now is the time for us to find a professional company, entity, whatever, that we can do and we can hire from the outside. That's what we need to do. If this was something that could have been performed earlier, it would have been done already. And we have a commitment to our citizens in this town to represent them and to help them and to help our businesses. And this is one of the ways that we can do that.
Okay. I understand, and I think I got my arms around this. Thank you for the additional clarification. Just really quick, I want to touch on the stockpiling of the PPE. So the one question that came up through this is, may fund payments be used for expenditures necessary to prepare for a future COVID-19 outbreak? So I think it's pretty hard to prove that we're preparing for a future outbreak because we're in the middle of one. But it goes on to say that fund payments may be used only for expenditures necessary to address the current public health emergency. So having enough PPE on hand for what we see are rising numbers, I would certainly reach back out to Chief Jenkins and Chief Heston and make sure that they feel fully stocked up. I'm going to reach out to Public Works and make sure they feel stocked up so we can continue pushing some of these things through based on our increasing numbers. I think we can build a very easy case to say we need some more stock.
And remember the other city employees too, that we want to make sure that we have enough masks and whatever else we need to make sure that our city staff is protected. That's at the library, that's at parks, it's all the other at finance and everything else. Nathan, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mike, on that same point, can you make a case where if there's a resurgence, especially with the flu coming up, is that something you can also, where it says preparing for a COVID, could you also package it with saying a resurgence of the COVID pandemic later on? I'm just throwing that out there.
Sure, you bet. And when considering the flu as well, Councilman Weller, you get a point of, you don't know it's COVID until the test is back, but the symptoms present the same. So when we're looking at getting reimbursements back on our fire and police calls, if they're dispatched to something that has flu-like symptoms, that's a potential situation. So we're asking for reimbursement on that and not waiting for the results to come back. So certainly a fair amount of stockpiling that is reasonable to get us through what we're going to see. Yeah, there's some reality to that.
And Dan, I saw your hand earlier.
I think I can just take that with Mike offline.
Okay. So we've had a direction, and this was a discussion item tonight. So where we're leaving it at is that we'll come back with a proposal for the 15th.
Yeah, and if it pleases the council, I'm not going to put this on the consent agenda since there was a lot of discussion on this tonight. I'll just make it a regular agenda item.
Yeah. And we might have some information in the meantime that we can share with them, which we'll then bring back for full public discussion.
Yeah, I really hope we're going to have some more information too on the second round of dollars. But as I get that information, I'll push that out in email. I'm not going to wait for a council meeting.
Okay. We now move to the new business. We did have one person who was going to come on, but they canceled. I don't have any more reports of any new business coming from the public at this point. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That, we are adjourned at 8:35 coming up.